What's up guys, Mikkel here, and was Bitcoin actually created by the United States government? Well, in this video, I want to share with you a shocking new interview by Raoul Pal where he talks about this exact thing. Guys, Raoul Pal is extremely connected. He was a former Goldman Sachs analyst and is very deep in the cryptocurrency sector. I want to share with you what he had to say about Bitcoin being created by the United States government because I think it's going to shock you. I also want to show you a brand new comment from Mark Cuban, specifically talking about whether or not XRP is a security. He is actually interacting with John D in here. This conversation is extremely enlightening. Make sure to stick around for that. Last of all, at the end of this video, I want to talk about a best and worst case scenario for the end of the Ripple SEC case. I was talking to Moon Lambo earlier today about what I think would actually be a win for this case. I think what I'm going to share with you guys is actually going to show you that it's actually a lot easier for Ripple and XRP holders to get a win in this case than many people are expecting. Make sure to stick around for that. You are not going to want to miss it. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. Make sure to take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It's really going to help me out so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP or the Flare token, make sure to check out my favorite exchange Uphold down in the description of this video. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So I want to start this video out and go over this clip of Raoul Pal talking about how he thinks the government actually created Bitcoin. Now this is super interesting to me because this is something the XRP army has been talking about for a while now. It was always labeled as a conspiracy theory. It was always labeled as XRP holders just trying to take a shot at Bitcoin. But guys, Raoul Pal is no member of the XRP community. He is an XRP holder, but he's not someone who is constantly interacting with us or even listening to our theories. So I thought it was extremely interesting what he had to say in this clip. And let me just preface it by saying, guys, if Bitcoin was actually created by the United States government, it will no longer be the #1 cryptocurrency. And the reason for that is right now, the only reason Bitcoin is the #1 cryptocurrency with its outdated tech is because people trust that no one actually knows who created it, and it's some super decentralized anomaly. Guys, if the creator of Bitcoin is actually discovered, and if it is in fact the United States government, Bitcoin is going to lose so much trust in the market, and it is going to open a space for a new cryptocurrency to take its spot. And I think you guys know exactly who I think would take that spot. First, let's listen up to this clip and then break it down.
Tell me more. I said, and I think the US government and the UK government invented it, which is the NSA and the GCHQ in the UK, who are the two world centers of cryptography. Because even how the white paper's written, it's
you think they're
transatlantic.
Satoshi?
Yes. I always have. And I asked the Department of Defense, they said, yeah, we've considered that too. That they seeded
it was
experiments.
Official, or it was just people from that went rogue?
I don't think it's necessarily a rogueness. I think like Google have like Google X, where they do tons of experiments, right? They know that one of the esoteric risks for the entire Western system is the issue of money. So there's probably groups of people who are given things to try. And if you can seed a new system, maybe they tried 100 of these and just one succeeded. We don't know. But it would make sense because that's what they do, this kind of stuff. So one of these took off. And so I think it's always been. I don't think it's a coincidence it came out of the financial crisis. I don't think it's a coincidence that I think they're trying to catch up. I think that the UK will have a CBDC. I think the Europeans will. It's all coming relatively soon, next 5 years, 3 years, 4 years. And they'll feel more in control of the system that they've got because they need to pay the interest payments.
So I quickly want to explain the theory for why the United States could have created Bitcoin and why they would have done it in the first place. Well, what we know is when Bitcoin was being created, the United States financial system was failing. Our currency was dropping off a cliff. We saw banks going under left and right, and the entire issuance of money as we know it was essentially falling apart. We needed a new money. We needed a new asset. And out of nowhere, during the failure of all these banks in 2008, Bitcoin appeared. Now, what we know is Bitcoin was actually registered, or the server Bitcoin was created on was actually under an MIT license. So this idea that no one knows who created it is kind of funny. Clearly someone knows who created it, because in our modern era, we can track IP addresses, we can go back, look at exactly where this thing was created, who was working on it, and we even know specific individuals like Larry Page, who were very, very involved in the early stages, and people like Hal Finney, who received the first Bitcoin transaction. And if the US government really wanted to know who created Bitcoin, and if they didn't, they likely would want to know who created it, they could simply go to these people, interrogate them, and say, okay, you need to tell us. And let's just be honest, the US government knows how to get that information from people. But this has never happened. Instead, it's remained some massive secret, despite the fact that all the evidence is there to actually figure out who created it. So why would the US government have created this? Well, ultimately, like Raoul Pal says at the end of the video, we are moving towards a new form of money. We are moving towards internet-based money, and ultimately, we're moving towards CBDCs. The US government could not just release a CBDC without testing something. They needed to know that the solution would work. They needed to know that blockchain technology and cryptography worked. So obviously, they had to release some kind of experiment, and there are many people like Raoul Pal who think that experiment was Bitcoin. Now guys, there are a whole bunch of other things that can be tied into this. Things like who the original creators of Bitcoin were, people like David Schwartz, who was working on the project, who also worked at the NSA. Guys, there are a ton of connections there, but I think the simple fact that someone like Raoul Pal would actually give credit to this theory says a lot. And as you can tell, when he specifically said that he asked the Department of Justice about this exact theory, and they essentially said, yeah, that's certainly possible, you can tell that he has asked very smart people about this theory, and he seems extremely confident about it. Overall, I just thought this was a super interesting interaction. And guys, the one last thing I will say is, if Bitcoin was the experiment, what crypto asset was the real one, the real production-ready cryptocurrency to change the financial system? Well, I would wager on the cryptocurrency already being used by the central banks, the cryptocurrency who seems to be involved in every single major new payment platform being created, and that would be XRP. So now I want to move on and quickly cover a very interesting interaction between Mark Cuban and John Deaton. And Mark Cuban actually just jumped in on this conversation, which was super cool because it shows that he is following John Deaton and XRP. He said the test for secondary sale of a token as a security should be very simple. Will the token survive if the minting/mining organization fails to exist? That by definition ends the Howey test application. And I thought this was so interesting because it's so simple, but it's also what the XRP community has been saying since day one. If Ripple went away tomorrow, XRP would still trade on the secondary market. So how is XRP a security of Ripple? If Ripple went away tomorrow and Ripple just disbanded as a business, who would XRP then be a security of? Obviously, it would be a security of no one. And the reason for that is because XRP is not a security of Ripple, just like it's not a security of anyone else. The fact that XRP could coexist on its own without Ripple being an entity managing the ledger literally proves it's a decentralized commodity. And it doesn't have to get any more complex than that. And I think that is such a simple and sober way of looking at it. Ripple does not have any obligations to XRP. XRP does not offer XRP holders any obligation to Ripple, and therefore if Ripple went away tomorrow, XRP would still exist in the market and trade perfectly normal. And I think that's something that we need to wrap our heads around. Whether or not Ripple had a specific sale that involved XRP in which a company was relying on Ripple to make that sale, that is completely different from the XRP you and I own being a security. I think it's so funny that Mark Cuban can just jump in here, grasp this concept perfectly, and literally disprove everything the SEC is saying. And I think it just shows that most people out there with common sense understand what's going on, and the SEC is completely out of line. Now, I want to finish this video off and just talk about what would be a win for Ripple in this case, what would be a win for XRP holders, because I honestly think a lot of people out there think that the XRP community and Ripple actually need a lot more than they do. Moonlambo tweeted out earlier today, as long as Judge Torres makes a ruling on XRP in the secondary market, this is a massive win for Ripple and XRP holders. And while I do agree with him, if Judge Torres specifically comes out and says XRP in the secondary market is not a security, XRP is not a security, that would be a massive win. But I actually think this case would be a massive win for Ripple and XRP holders as long as XRP specifically is not called a security. And that means, and it might have sounded similar to what I said versus Moonlambo said, but the small distinction is Moonlambo thinks the judge actually needs to come out and specifically say XRP in the secondary market is not a security, while I think even her ignoring that issue would still be a big win. And why do I think that would still be a big win even if she doesn't even address this issue? At the end of the day, the SEC is the one who brought this case. The SEC is the party who is specifically saying XRP itself is the security. So if Judge Torres completely ignores that statement by the SEC and says she is not going to rule on that issue, well, at the end of the day, that's pretty much a win. That pretty much lets us know that the SEC was not able to prove that XRP is a security, and that's a massive win. Because as long as XRP is deemed not a security, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything else. As long as we know that it could not be determined to be a security based on the facts that the SEC brought, guys, that should be enough for the market to understand if the SEC was not able to prove in this 2.5-year-long court battle that XRP trading in 2013 could have been a security, there is no way they could win this case going forward. XRP is only getting more and more decentralized, and if Judge Torres couldn't even take up that issue with the SEC today, there is no way it could be proved in the future. That's why I just think it's so important to look at this case just from a perspective of saying, even in a worst case scenario, what is the best outcome we can get? And I think in a worst case scenario, if Judge Torres just completely ignores secondary holders, which I don't think she will, I think that's the entire reason she let John Deaton into this case. I think that's the entire reason she let 75,000 XRP holders into this case, specifically to comment on secondary sales. But if she was to ignore it, I still think it's a win as long as she doesn't specifically come out and say XRP, the asset itself, is the security. As long as those words are not said, I think in a worst case scenario, that is still a massive win for Ripple and XRP holders. And guys, I'll be honest with you, I think there was almost a 0% chance she would come out and say XRP itself is a security. I think that worst case scenario is off the table. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does mean so much. And for now, Mikkel out.